Thank you very much for coming over to this press conference today. We would like to start the press conference organized by Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association. First, I would like to introduce the speakers for today. The chairman of JAMA, Koji Sato. Vice Chairman, Masanori Katayama. Vice Chairman, Toshihiro Suzuki. Vice Chairman, Ivan Espinosa. Vice Chairman, Toshihiro Mibe. Vice Chairman, Motofumi Shitara. Vice Chairman, Akira Matsunaga. In total, 7 speakers. And please take a seat. First, I would like to invite Mr. Sato, the chairman, to make opening remarks. Thank you for coming to this press conference today. I am Sato, chairman of JAMA. This is my first press conference since I assumed the chairmanship, and I would like to entertain as many questions as possible. Thank you very much for coming. And today, since the new leadership, we have identified 7 new challenges to which JAMA has been committed and to having intensive discussions. As an industrial organization, individual member organizations or companies and trying to share the common themes. So somewhat a more passive approach, but given the current developments, I believe that automobile industry has to address the issues of technological innovation and the environmental protection. Many challenges we have to overcome. Therefore, it is not instead of the individual company's approach. There are supposed to be limitations in that regard. Therefore, we have to share the areas of common actions. They have to be created in that way. And then we can, in other areas, we are going to apply a management of resources and to the place where we have to compete against each other. On the other hand, looking at the current situation, decarbonization or geopolitical risks and energy constraints, we have so many issues that individual member companies would not be able to deal with because they are of gigantic scale. They are not the issues that we can give immediate solutions to. There should be a prolonged and sustained approach sometimes required. And given the recent Middle East situation, the geopolitical risks are mounting. Therefore, we have to be sensitive to this development. Energy and supply chain uncertainty should require resilience. And that is a big issue. And yesterday, there were many companies released their replies with regard to the spring wage negotiation. What is most important is the industrial competitiveness, and that needs to be continued to be strengthened. So this is the overall industrial competitiveness that has to be enhanced. This demand is mounting. Therefore, we have shared this sense of common sense of a crisis among the board members. And on top of that, the thing I was talking about at the opening of this year, the international competitiveness. In the past years, the automobile industry dealt with many different actions, but we have to question ourselves if we could maintain international competitiveness. Therefore, structural issues need to be addressed. And from that perspective, as I mentioned earlier, the new 7 challenges. With regard to the details of the 7 challenges, before touching upon them, there are 3 things that we have put into these challenges. when it comes to these individual themes, they are all scope. They are big. And so we put in place the narrative so that people will be able to understand the meaning. Within the industrial realm, there are things that could be solved, but there are also those things that we have to go beyond the industry that requires co-creation. And from this perspective, I think the exit itself not going to be the growth of the automobile industry. Instead, what kind of role the automobile industry will be able to play in society? What kind of societal goal is the automobile industry committed to? That would require co-creation and partnership with many stakeholders. I think in order to gain societal understanding, that kind of approach is going to be essential. And secondly, that the goal is the social deployment. There are many issues to be addressed, so we have to start with the low-hanging fruits. That means only discussion would not lead us anywhere. On the other hand, if we are going to be complacent with doing things that we can do, the discussion, the grand discussion, will not be able to be brought about. In terms of the discussion, in general discussion, okay. But when it comes to individual actions, in particular, with regard to how we are going to make an impact on society for the society to survive, I think we have to come up with the grand themes and should be implemented in society. That kind of approach is essential. And the third point is that the diversity needs to be converted into strength. There are 14 member organizations, companies. This is a rare the industrial organization compared to the international standard. Many companies will be able to cooperate with each other. This kind of energy that's coming out of this organization serves as the source of energy for the survival in the international global market. So with that kind of sense of agility, we would like to address the issues. In terms of the communication with the media people, I hope that what we are doing will be communicated or conveyed to media people while it is ongoing. What kind of discussions we are being engaged in and what kind of issues we are facing. We would like to give you that kind of information in an enlivened manner. Things would not come out easily. There are many things, many obstacles. So the process we have been engaged in will be communicated, and that will enable us to convey our passion to our own tasks. And then, in order to build a rich mobility society, we would like to continue with this endeavor. And that concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you very much. We would now like to move on to the Q&A today. Please note that this is a place for an explanation at the JAMA. Therefore, please refrain from asking questions in regards to individual companies. And in order to take as many questions as possible from everyone, please make sure to note that we can only take one question from each company. Thank you very much for your understanding in advance. First, let us take a question from people at the venue. If you have your question, please raise your hand. A staff member will bring you the microphone. Please make sure to mention your name and where you belong to before you ask us with the questions. Thank you. Now, at the very first person in the first line, please. My name is Chiba. I belong to Nippon Kogyo Shimbun. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Chairman or the Vice Chairman, if I may, I would like to ask this question to two of you. So for the last several months, you have been having discussions in regards to the 7 priority challenges. Are there any particular themes where you think that you have been able to make much progress, or are there any themes that you feel are difficult to deal with? I would like to know your take on in regards to that. Chairman, please. Thank you very much for your question. As I noted before, all of the 7 new priority challenges are massive. These are the kind of challenges that cannot be solved by an initiative by one company at the same time. the forces of the private companies is not sufficient. We need to work on, or we need to have the collaboration between the government and the private sectors, and the environment faced by each company, and also the strengths are different as well. Therefore, we have to first and foremost align the vision for the goal, which I think is quite important. To what degree are we going to work on? What shall be the timeline? Such alignment on such matters must be conducted. We need to make sure that the top management of each company is convinced and aligned in regards to those matters, which I think is quite important. We have been spending lots of efforts and time on that. Anyone who would like to talk about individuals' priority challenge? Well, the impression was one of the questions being posed. So if I may, I would like to provide you with my impression about the progress. As for myself, well, amongst the old 7 challenges, I think one of them was the competitive clean energy. Strengthening competitiveness in green energy was the part which I was working on. Conventionally, it was all about the approach to be taken by the JAMA. But amongst as we worked on that for the 7 issues, we felt the necessity of the involvement of other industry. And I think we are now able to do that. Not only the convenience of the JAMA, but for example, in regards to the clean energy, we have been working on the discussion with the Federation for the Oil as well. Through that, we have been able to deepen our mutual understanding. Through the course of the discussions, we were able to think as to what sort of things we can do in order to disseminate the clean energy further, which I think was one of the big achievements we have been able to make. So now we have the 7 new priority challenges. Well, there are some small ones, medium-sized ones, large ones. Instead of trying to work on them as the automotive industry alone, we are going to have the involvement of other relevant industries and the governments. If we could do so, we should be able to find a pathway towards the success. By working on such initiatives, we look forward to making moves to move forward. We have been able to feel such sense of achievements. That's all from my side. Thank you. Well, if I may, I would also like to add to that. The so-called global competition or a competitive environment, what I can say is that such an environment is becoming fierce every day. Against that backdrop, automotive industry in Japan is now posed with the question as to whether we would be able to survive or not. So the area of the collaboration is required. With a sense of speed, we have to work on the collaboration. And I think that indeed is going to be the key. Looking back at the past, as you may know, the structure of the automotive industry has the players of the OEMs are also the suppliers as well. There were the structure of the Zyro with the Keiretsu, that indeed was the fact for the last few decades. Against that environment, well, we had the existing areas of the collaboration which we believe are not enough. So we are now trying to work on the reorganization. We need to dismantle the old structure, or else we would not be able to create the new areas of the collaboration. Honestly speaking, that is the big challenge that we have to face. Today, we have all the executive directors of the JAMA, and we have worked on the discussion for about an hour or so. And I think our understanding amongst us are aligned. So. And of course, that have been summarized at the new 7 priority challenges. And I would say that the critical point here is the sense of speed, or else we won't be able to secure the global competitiveness. With that included, under the new structure, we look forward to proceeding forward so that we would be able to secure the global competitiveness.
Thank you. So we would like to move on to a second question. If you have a question, please raise your hand. In the second row, the third person. Kuruma News. Kaneko is my name. Thank you. The 7 challenges. The fourth point, that is strengthening human resources. This is something that is still under review. The themes are now being under review. And with regard to this, I think individual companies, in terms of sales and R&D and production, there are different ideas. And probably going forward, I think engineers' problem, as well as the IT personnel shortage, these are going to be major issues. Currently, what you can see at the moment, the points that you have to focus on, and what kind of steps are going to be followed in order to identify which themes are going to be selected. Well, let me elaborate first. I think this is under review. This is the reality, as a matter of fact. There are different themes, the ones that you are referring to. And then in terms of the depopulation issue, the population in terms of the workforce for the automotive industry, which is quite severe, about by 2030, 20% reduction. That's the forecast. And the R&D and production of automobiles, that means that would require 20% improvement in productivity. Otherwise, the same quality cannot be secured. Therefore, AI and the robotics technologies related into productivity improvement. Japanese-like approach is going to be adopted. That is the discussion on the way. But what kind of persons and experts with what kind of skills should engage in such a process in order to establish that kind of a process? This is the starting point, I believe. We focus our efforts on hardware part in our history, so to speak. Therefore, software-related personnel, how the automobile industry is going to train them and offer them opportunities. We have to think about them as well. On different scenes, I think the human resources are the source of the biggest energy. And therefore, we have to focus what areas for this personnel development. We have to think of different scenarios in this regard. And once we go progress a little bit, we'll be able to identify further. I think the labor calendar is one of the issues. In the manufacturing process, the labor calendar that is attuned to the production and the supply chain is established accordingly. However, going forward, collaboration with the other industries, I think we have to align the holidays so that the labor flexibility and mobility can be secured. This is one of the other aspects that we have to focus on. So, should I speak? As Mr. Sato mentioned, it is a broad theme. In the past, the practice is the software SDV, that the software may be necessary. However, going forward, speaking of AI, the software has been transformed, and the production or the manufacturing is also being transformed, like with the advent of humanoid. And the maintenance is also a big issue. Therefore, speaking of the labor, there are different kinds of approach that we can adopt. So in the short term, mid-term, and the long term, what kind of human resources are going to be essential and need to be strengthened? This is the difficult issue. Therefore, that's the reason behind why this theme is under review. But we have to identify their direction in a short period of time, and so that because the manufacturing is based on human resources, this is extremely important. That means, as the industry as a whole, we have to further explore the possibility of human resources development. Thank you very much. Next question.
Those of you with questions are kindly asked to raise your hand. The person who is sitting at the very back in the center. My name is Yokoyama. I belong to Toyo Keizai. I'm not so sure whether the following question is related to number one, but many of your companies are putting or seeing the U.S. at the central at the market. And recently, in Europe, the Chinese the EV is becoming the massive, and the U.S. is aware that no Chinese EVs are around. And I think this is also related to President Trump. But in order to deal with the Chinese EV in relation to the U.S., I would like to know how you see the environment in the U.S. Are there any discussions going on? Are there any threats that you see? Well, at the JAMA, what we are saying from before is that a multi-pathway strategy is our winning pathway for Japan, and battery EV is one of the methodologies that would enable us to success. And we are going to pay the effort in order to make sure that that would be disseminated. So this is not really about how we compete with China. We have to make sure that Japan makes a contribution to each country in a way that is suited to the local community. So we need to supply the vehicles which is required by the U.S. people. That's going to be the key. Thank you.
Next question. The second row from the front and at the end of the row. Reuter Shiraishi is my name. The 7 priorities, number 1 and number 7. That given the recent situation in the Middle East, what kind of impact do you see on behalf of JAMA? What is the recent you take? The gasoline prices are rising, and there is the stockpile release by the government. How's the demand going to play out in the future? For example, the naphtha and the raw materials for the tires, there is a concern over the shortage of such materials. Are there going to be constraints going forward on the OEMs? And when do you think this kind of risks are going to emerge? I think there is a difference in terms of the stockpile of the components and parts. I wonder if there is going to be any the policy that you are discussing in order to deal with this kind of situation at the JAMA. I don't know if I will be able to answer this question straight, because it is not in the moment to discuss the level of impact at the moment. That about 800,000 vehicles are exported to the Middle East currently, and 2.5 trillion yen. That is the size of the economic impact. Therefore, the Middle East is an important market for us. And what is most important is to secure the safety of the Japanese national. Thanks to the support from the Japanese government, we have been successful in securing safety. And on this occasion, I would like to say thank you very much and to the government. And the second point is the logistics and the material procurement. With regard to the logistics, the ships cannot enter the Strait of Hormuz, and that would bring us a delay in the procurement. And we are witnessing that. Usually, the shipping period or lead time is about 50 days. And anyway, we have to secure the shipping route. So we have been selecting different routes. For example, the Cape of Hope, that is going into the distance is going to be doubled. Therefore, how the shipping route is going to be secured for the final products. This is going to depend on the logistics capacity as well as the manufacturing capacity, and each member company is working on that. There are some the vehicles produced overseas, and depending on the member company, so they are going to be incorporated into the idea. And then with regard to the materials, aluminum and naphtha, about the 70% of it comes from the Middle East. And so if this situation prolongs, needless to say, there's going to be an issue on procuring the procurement problems. I think there should be an alternative sources and to be explored. And depending on how long the situation will prolong, our options will be changed. For the time being, do you have any idea about the secured stockpile? Do you have any idea about the timeline? Of course, each member company has its own idea about the number of stockpile, but this is not something that I need to reveal at this press conference. Thank you very much.
Now, we would also like to take questions from those who are participating online, if there are any. We are going to appoint you, so once you are appointed, please make sure to unmute your microphone and the video camera. Please make sure to mention your name and where you belong to before you ask your question. Once you're appointed, please do so. Okay, then, let us take questions. Tanigawa-san, would you please unmute your microphone? Once you can see your visual on the screen, would you please start asking your question? My name is Tanigawa. I belong to the Impress Car Watch. I hope that you can hear me. If I may, I would like to ask a question. Just now, as you have pointed out, you are now trying to work on the cross-industry collaboration and human resource securing. And I think the mobility show is going to be conducted together with the CTEC. So it's a joint collaboration. For example, do you have any idea as to how you would be able to convey the attractiveness of the automotive industry? And another question is in relation to electrification. People are paying much more attention in regards to the intelligence. Well, it seems to me that just like case of the Isuzu and the Nissan, individual companies are putting lots of effort for the intelligence, but I do not see the sign of the industrial the initiatives. As a JAMA, are there any collaboration or the joint efforts being planned at this moment in regards to the intelligence of the vehicles? So in regards to the mobility show, anyone who would like to respond to the question? Okay, should I be the one to respond to the question? Well, first and foremost, in regards to the mobility show in October, we are going to do that in parallel with the CTEC. Up until now, we have been working on the mobility show, and together with the startups, we have been able to keep on having the good communication. Number of the participants have been increasing from the past. At the Beach Week, what we would like to achieve is as follows. Well, centered into the automobile, we would like to connect a variety of initiatives. So just like in case of the business matching. And Tanigawa-san, what you have pointed out is in regards to the inter-industrial collaboration in a much wider way. That's how I understand it. For example, the value chain business. Well, after the dissemination of the electrified vehicles, I think creation of the values for the value chain would be quite important. Therefore, for example, the energy operators. The collaboration with the energy operators, I think, is going to be important as we move on to the future. Well, through the course of the discussion in regards to the 7 priority challenges, we would like to work on such matters as well. In regards to your second question about making the vehicles intelligent, that I think is quite tough. Honestly speaking, well, at this moment, yes, it is true that we believe that this is an area for the co-creation. But for example, the middleware of the software. Up to that level, yes, we believe that we might be able to align ourselves, but to what layer, for each layer, are we going to collaborate or compete and so on? Such discussions would have to take place so that we would be able to have the software or the intelligence-related initiatives in a more aligned way. I think we can have more discussion on it. And please note that this has just started. If I may, on top of what had been mentioned by the chairman Sato, what is it that we can do as the automotive industry? AI and the technical related matters are being tackled by individual companies at this moment. But for example, when we think about the actual the business, things such as the robot taxi operation would be one example. For example, as Japan, maybe we can work on the rule formulation for Japan, including the matters related to regulation formulation. Those are the kind of things which requires the work at the JAMA. Well, from the standpoint of creating the environment, I think there are lots of works that would have to be conducted by the JAMA. Therefore, it's not really related only to the AI. There are some areas where we can foresee the commercialization in Japan quickly. We would like to change the society in a good way. In that sense, it's going to be meaningful. Such are the initiatives that the JAMA would like to work on proactively. Thank you very much. Well, in regards to the mobility show, for example, I was wondering that you may be able to also work on the session for the job fair. That's the reason why I decided to ask you that question. Well, the job fair, especially what I would like to note is that we have started doing it at the Biz Week 2 years ago. And in the last year, we have expanded the mobility show. So this is all about the perspective of having more friends. We had not been able to have a direct connection with the startups. That was that was the issue that we understood. But as a place for the collaboration, we decided that we needed to expand our relationship with the startups. Well, we need to continuously do this every year, or else we won't be able to expand the foundation of the friends and the peers. We need to think of a way to further expand this foundation. That is indeed what we would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question from the online participants. Any question? If not, we would like to go back into the questions on site. So questions are from the venue. In the front line, row, on the far right. Motor journalist Okazaki is my name. Thank you. It is about the overall situation. Those are 7 challenges, new 7 challenges of JAMA. Given that fact, the Making Japan Strong pursuit by Prime Minister Takaichi, I think there is a resonance between the two policies or directions. On the other hand, at the government level, what is missing is domestic investment. That's what she's arguing about. There should be the supply strength to be reinforced. And with regard to this kind of observation, what is your take with regard to the JAMA? Thank you very much for the question. Truly, the government or the Takaichi administration is focusing on the focus areas or priorities. And with regard to the investment in order to manage the crisis, I think what kind of technologies need to be identified for this purpose? And they have to be discussed in the first place. But what is important is the exit strategy. The exit strategy is going to be addressed by the mobility industry. Out of those 17 key priorities, mobility is deeply linked with all those items or key areas. And what is important is how to implement the social deployment. And then for that to be achieved, there should be the investment to be made. That is what the exit strategy is. And that role should be played by the automotive industry. From that viewpoint, I think our policy, or 7 priority challenges, should be aligned with the government policy. That means that instead of just building manufacturing plants, rather that you are going to study the details of the proposal. For example, when it comes to the social deployment of multi-pathways, we have been focusing on the vehicle side, as a matter of fact. But through different kinds of efforts, we have understood that the vehicles, infrastructure, and the system, they have to mature hand in hand. Otherwise, there will be no penetration. With the energy sources diversing, it is not going to be a society without one single answer. Therefore, different kinds of approaches should be achieved and through different investment channels. That would require specific actions. That would lead society into investment. Not only focusing on the manufacturing, there should be the multiple approaches in order to encourage the investment, and that would generate demand. Thank you very much.
The person at the very front line. If I may, I belong to Chunichi Shimbun. My name is that's me. This is going to be a bit different from the new 7 priority challenges. Well, it's been almost 12 months since the introduction of the tariff against the vehicles. I would like to know what sort of impact it has caused to the automotive industry and what sort of initiatives are you taking in order to overcome the impact. I would like to know your outlook. I would like to pose the question to Chairman and other Vice Chairman. Thank you. Yes, it's almost 12 months. Well, thanks to the tremendous efforts being spent by the government, we had reached the conclusion of the 15%. So, of course, the economic impact was so huge. And at this time, well, I would like to ask we would like to keep on making the request for the government and to be more future-oriented. But on the other hand, we have to also understand that there is a new normalization in order to deal with the situation. I think it is now clear for all of us. Well, the production conventional production improvement would not be enough. That would have to be the shared understanding amongst us. Well, we need to make sure that we focus on the foundation that would enable us to do the right thing. I think that has been clarified, and that leads to the reason why we came up with the 7 priority challenges. Each of the company is working on this matter with such understanding. Well, Shitara-san, maybe you might want to respond to the question from the standpoint of the 2 leaders. Yes. Well, the tariff-related response in relation to each company. Well, especially including an Asian region, well, the tax-related issue in the U.S. is causing impact to other regions as well. Well, throughout the world, this is requiring us to have a careful look in the geopolitical matter throughout the world, so that we'll be able to respond to the situation. That's how I understand it. Well, in relation to the U.S., we have to take a look at China. We also have to take note of the response against the Middle East situation and also Russia. So we are starting to see the impact inflicted against each element. So it's all about having the total optimization through the collaboration between the private and public side. We need to deal with it. And at the same time, at the JAMA, we have to look for the kind of initiative that can be taken. In the last fiscal year, the impact of the tariff was from the middle of the term until the end of the fiscal year, the impact had been inflicted, but this is going to have the impact for the full year in this year. And so in that sense, the impact is going to be much massive this year. So we have to make sure that we think of the necessary countermeasures for the future as well. Each OEM is currently having a discussion on this matter at this moment. Thank you very much.
Only one or two questions will be taken because of the in the interest of time. On the right-hand side. Thank you. Nikkei Shimbun, Asayama is my name. Now, with these materials, the investment in the U.S., Matsuyama-san informed us last month. Currently, Prime Minister Takaichi is now in the United States. What kind of requests or actions or requests do you have made to the U.S. or anything that it can be considered as a gift to be presented to the United States? And related to question, how's the industry is going to be linked with the U.S. industry? So I would like to invite Sato-san's comment or any other vice chair's comments on this. Thank you very much. The reason why we have distributed this material is that the automotive industry has made a great contribution for many years into the United States economy. And once again, I would like to remind that fact. And it is not a short-term one; it is a long-term result. This is the business that has taken root in the U.S. economy, and that generated the employment. The continuity and the signs of our commitment. This has to be reminded once again. And this is something that I would like to communicate to the press people once again. The uniqueness of Japanese the automotive industry is related to the project investment on a regular basis. New models investment, and there's going to be investment to be made on manufacturing sites. So this creates the stable investment to be generated, and that would accompany employment generation in total about 110,000. This suggests and demonstrates that the automotive industry has made a great impact on the U.S. economy, and that kind of fact needs to be communicated. Going forward, we are going to collaborate with the industry organization in the United States in order to discuss carbon neutrality or mobility or autonomous driving as one of the social system, how they are going to be integrated, this requires the international discussion. Therefore, we would like to continue the collaboration with the industry organization in the U.S.
Maybe it's my time to turn. Okay. Now, I think when it comes to the U.S., on top of what Sato-san just mentioned, I think there is a big team of trying to standardize regulations as much as possible. This applies not only to North America, by the way, but in some elements, I think the automotive industry needs to simplify so that we can get more streamlined and be more competitive. And we're starting that discussion here in the JAMA, trying to find areas where we can simplify things when it comes to vehicle specifications and regulations, and trying to match those also with some markets overseas. The other area where we can imagine improving the collaboration with the U.S. Is the future technologies. So how do we go around autonomous drive, as Sato-san was mentioned? homologation processes for such technologies, trying to make them as streamlined as possible. And the other thing is very practical, but if the world of tariffs will remain, simplifying the processes for quantifying and tracking tariffs is also something that we can improve. And these are the topics that we should continue discussing with the U.S. authorities. Yeah. Thank you.
アメリカとの関係で申し上げますと、佐藤会長もおっしゃっていただきましたけれども、やはり標準基準、そして規則というものにつきまして、今後対処していかなければならないというふうに考えております。特に北米におきましては、そういった要素を北米との関係について申し上げれば、このような部分につきまして、簡素化というものをしていかなければならない、それをすることによって競争力を強化をし、維持をしていくということにつながっていくと思っております。で、JAMA におきましても、こういった側面につきまして議論を深めているところであります。で、実際にそのような規格等におきまして、標準化ものについて、簡素化を進めていくということをしていく、そして外国の市場にそれを合わせていくようにしていくということが重要であるというふうに考えている、議論をしているところです。で、それ以外の分野につきましても、例えば技術分野におきましては、アメリカ側と協力できるのではないかというふうに考えております。自動運転であるとか、ホモロゲーション、型式証明等につきましても、さらにシンプルにしていく、合理化を図っていくということが重要なテーマであるのではないかと思っております。で、関税の問題についていきますと、このあたりにつきましても、関税のプロセスを簡素化をしていくということも、もう一つ議論が必要なテーマではないかと考えています。
Thank you very much for that. I think it's about time for us to end the press conference. I think, well, I'm sure that you may have more questions, but due to the time limitation, if it would be appreciated if you could understand that we must close the press conference. With this, we would like to close today's JAMA press conference. Thank you very much for participating with us today.